All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I believe that we are live. Right, Scott?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, perfect. Then welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to this, I think now fourth webinar from the ULTIMO project. Today, we are talking about supply and demand in the emerging AV markets, especially with insights from both Europe, US, and Asia. So a very relevant, interesting topic. We are joined today by very good speakers, starting with Martin Russ from Austria Tech, Miranda McBride from the NNC A&T State University from North Carolina. We have Bertrand and Emily here from Navia Mobility, Rico Kempfer from P3 Autonomous Mobility, and Christoph Glauser from ArgYou Market Research. My name is Christian Riester. I co-lead the team for automated mobility here at BAX for over 6 years now, working with cities and European transport authorities, mainly on technology roadmaps and investment plans. And in ULTIMO, we are responsible not just for dissemination work, which is also the reason why I'm here, but also on service level agreements between public and private stakeholders and HD maps. So what to expect from today? Essentially, we have 1.5 hours for this webinar. We will start with an introduction about what ULTIMO is for those of you who are not very familiar with the project yet. Then we will do a quick and interactive discussion starter, if you will, using Mentimeter, involving you, the audience, to get some insights from your sentiment, perception, and opinions about the AV world at the moment. Afterwards, we'll actually dive into the presentations. It will be around 1 hour, so that's around 10 minutes each, starting with Martin, then Miranda, Bertrand, Emily from Navia, then moving over to Rico and Christoph. The session will close with a Q&A session of around 15 minutes. That's also when you will be able to ask questions. You can already ask questions during the presentation, of course, using the Q&A or chat functions that you should be able to see on your panel. But we will basically look at them verbally in the Q&A section. However, some presenters may already answer them in written form during the presentations. So yeah, with no further ado, what is ULTIMO? For those of you who are not familiar with the project yet, essentially, ULTIMO, we aim to realize user-centric, sustainable mobility through very large-scale deployments of shared automated vehicles, especially compared to previous projects. In essence, what we're trying to do is moving from theoretical concepts to real-life deployments. A bit of facts about the project. So it's a very big Horizon Europe project, both funded by the European Union and the Swiss Confederation. Total budget is quite high, 56 million euros in total. A lot of partners from all over Europe, if you will. Most core to the project, of course, are the public transport authorities, Route in Norway, Deutsche Bahn in Germany, and TPG in Geneva, supported by solution providers such as Padam, Siemens, and also Navia that we have in the webinar today. Network organizations also facilitate their outreach via UITP, for example, and SAM in Switzerland. And the whole project, of course, is complemented by state-of-the-art knowledge institutes and mobility experts that you see on the slide here. The project will go for 4 years, maybe a bit longer if there's an extension, and is coordinated by Deutsche Bahn from Germany. As I said, large-scale deployments, how does that look like? So the idea really is to deploy up to 15 shared automated vehicles per site. First site being in Herford in North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany, operated by Deutsche Bahn. Second one being in Geneva, operated by TPG, the local public transport operator. Both of them are still negotiating or in discussions with potential AV vehicle providers. I think we will hear some news soon, so stay tuned around that. However, of course, many of you know the most advanced stakeholder in the project currently is Rute in Oslo. They and their local partners, Holo and Movit, they already moved beyond initial testing of 5 Mobileye-driven NEO vehicles and now opening their trial to the general public in Grorud Valley around Oslo. So that's exciting to see and follow. Then what I will try to do now is actually do a little discussion starter with you, the audience. I will quickly change my shared screen. Meanwhile, you can hopefully log into 1 second. All right. Sharing. There you go. I believe that's the wrong one. My mistake. For some reason, it's always a bit tricky to, here we go, to use these online tools. Okay, you should see a QR code. You can also see up here a code that you can use on menti.com to log into the quiz. I will give you a few minutes, and then you can actually indeed see here the first question, which is, which 3 companies do you think will lead the market globally in advanced automated driving technology by 2030? So I'll give you a few minutes to answer. For those of you who already joined the second webinar of Ultimo might be familiar with the questions. Those are exactly the same ones. We're mostly interested in how your opinion has evolved in the last half year, because of course it's a fast-paced environment, and we are curious to see how also the opinion has shifted since then. It seems most people seem to be looking at Waymo, WeRide, Tesla, Baidu perhaps as well. This will be interesting for the discussion later on, because we will be talking about, of course, the supply and demand. So you can have a look at the results that we see right now as a discussion for later. All right, I think we have most responses confirmed. Now we move on to the next question, which is, by what year do you think will it be more cost effective for a public transport operator to use automated buses instead of human-driven ones? You can just type in a number, indeed. Interesting. So most people seem to look at a rather short to medium term time horizon, I would say, 2030. Some even saying before the change of the decade, 2020, 2035 being what is most agreed on. Just 10 more seconds. All right, then we move over to the next question. Maybe a tricky one, but I want you to rate these key factors that may be holding back Europe's deployment of automated vehicles compared to the likes of the US and China. From no impact or insignificant to being a major roadblock or being super significant. Is it the lack of targeted investments in innovation? Is it the conservative, perhaps regulatory approach? Is it collaboration between regulators and innovators? Is it the potentially lack of public trust and acceptance, or the availability of technology providers? I now realize that I can add a timer. That was very, very useful. All right, 10 seconds left. And all right, then thanks a lot. I think also the responses kind of go into a certain direction. We see the lack of target investments being the biggest roadblock, I would say, followed by potentially conservative regulatory approach in Europe. So this will be a nice discussion starter for the Q&A section that we have at the end of the webinar. So please stick around. All right, then I'll just go over to the main part of the presentation again. It should be here. There you go. All right. But actually, now it's enough from my side. Martin, let me pass the torch over to you. The stage is yours.
Thank you. So good afternoon to everybody, or good morning, wherever you are. I hope you can see my screen. Supply and demand of automated mobility. So maybe you will get some perspectives or specific Austrian perspective from somewhere in between, I would say. So what is the strategic perspective and approaches that we actually try to undertake to shape these future markets in Austria? And so there's, I would call it a strategic approach towards an ecosystem building that is needed. So of course, our National Ministry of Innovation and Transport, after two more or less action plans in automation, where a lot of research was happening and we created legal frameworks for testings, it's more that the ministry itself steps back on the same level maybe as other players, as others has to take over, like operators, industry, exactly to initiate those investments where we see it's not only about public investments, it's about a common investment perspective. To do this, we started something like the Swiss colleagues already did a couple of years ago with SAM. We started SAM Austria, so really a national strategic alliance on mobility where we bring all the relevant stakeholders together. I think still where we are active, and this is still our, would call it actual level playing field for the next years, is large-scale testing, implementation activities, evaluation, but also more and more important, and alignment with what's going on European level, and not just in projects like ULTIMO. Of course, we have to monitor these activities, but also look into future potential deployments. And we have to do this, this is our, I think we are quite convinced that this is needed. It's not just Europe, it's a global market we have to address. And for us, as a strong country with good mobility technology players, a strong automotive supply industry, it's more than the vehicle we have to look into. Of course, it starts with the vehicle for sure, but it's what kind of components, what kind of services, how do we run the fleet operations, the remote surveillance. There's a bunch of perspectives, so to say, with regard to market options for the national industry. But to do all this, I think testing is not enough. We have to create a legal framework, as many other European countries already did. This will be or should be in place somewhere, I would call it around 2026. Maybe this is a moonshot, maybe we are faster, but this is actually, I think, the actual priority that we look into. To go more into detail, so what is this strategic alliance all about that we see this is a core element and function we have to provide on the national level? It's really a very flexible and open collaboration structures. It's knowledge exchange, of course, but also and transfer, but not just nationally. It's really shaping around Austrian key competences. So there's a joint added value that we will also see. We need to shape these then together with other countries, other regions. And it's, of course, the execution of strategies and roadmaps with regard really implementation, deployment, where the strategic alliance support a common long-term goal and vision. And in the end, it's what you were referring all to, it's these common investment decisions where we say this is crucial for competitiveness of the sector, but also for these needed or possible mobility system upgrade. So build competences, build partnership, new business model, building trust, in the end, build better mobility with automation. Other initiatives that we are actually starting or just started is really, we had already a couple of lighthouse projects. We have several test environments up and running here in Austria, but this next one is really looking into an add-on to actual public transport operation. So it's not just the vehicles, it's how to run the service, it's fleet operations that we're looking into. And of course, we are looking also there for not just national, but also for international partners. The second thing we are actually doing is a project called Auto Ready. So it's a kind of an automated mobility readiness framework. So focusing on planning and operational needs and not just keeping the competence to some of the players, but really provide the needed competence for the planning, for investment decisions, to the whole mobility ecosystem in Austria. And of course, this also is integrating monitoring and evaluation, especially for the public sectors with regard to effects and impacts on safety, on required skill, but also technical challenges, for instance, for the public sector. But we also did, of course, and still are doing in Austria, is a strong engagement in European projects like SHOW was a forerunner project of ULTIMO award on freight, but it's also a strong engagement that we, for instance, do in the projects called like FAME and the future project SIC Ambassador, where it's about the common knowledge base on European level. I think this engagement, we see it's important also for these kind of ecosystem and market building on the national level. But when it comes to international cooperation, maybe this is my last slide, but I think it's what's really needed for this kind of scale up actually is, of course, a European perspective, what I called on the full technological and organizational stack that we need to run this. Because the question was on when it will be competitive towards or in comparison to running a bus service, then it's exactly this kind of full punch of perspective that we need. So it's more than vehicles, but it's not just a public transport or mobility decision, it's a capacity building and competitiveness decision. And so I think from our perspective, maybe as a small country, this is different to some of the larger players. We see not just European collaboration needed, we see global collaboration needed, even when this global collaboration is at the moment not so easy. Yeah? But CCAN is a global market in all of those nice domains, fleet management, data usage, and whatever. And of course, in future, even more important, especially with the scale up of automated services, then how to plan and operate not just the vehicles, but also the infrastructure, traffic and mobility management, and how we create robust digital infrastructures for robust services. And with regard to the market, I was looking for a European figure on that. I didn't find one. So it's an US transportation market perspective on when we see on what's going on there in the full mobility landscape. It's about 14% of all the jobs in this transportation and mobility market is manufacturing of vehicles. So already now we see sales and services, transport carriers and operators. It's larger, but we see, or we need a look on the whole mobility market to better understand where automation comes in and how this kind of supply and demand matching is better embedded in a better understanding of the whole mobility market and investment decisions we are taking today for making this future happen. So with that, thanks a lot and handing back.
Thanks, Martin. Thanks for your insights to your work in Austria specifically and your requirements to the world, essentially. Please, for the audience, if you have any questions, again, write them in the chat and we can pick them up later. But now let me share the screen again for Miranda, who will share with us her insights from North Carolina.
Yes, thank you for having me here today. I am actually on a different side of the industry. So I'm from education. I actually am a professor in our Department of Marketing and Supply Chain Management, but my background is in industrial and systems engineering. So I do research that looks at the integration between humans and the technology. And one of the areas in which I've applied this is to these autonomous shuttles that we have deployed on our campus. Next slide. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, we have several different areas on our campus that we are looking into automation, but in particular, these autonomous shuttles. So one of the ones is the center that's right in the center there of the screen, CR2C2. That's our Center for Regional and Rural Connected Communities. It is a consortium of 7 universities. And we are looking into ways that we can integrate these technologies into transportation systems in more rural areas, because here in the United States, about 20% of our population lives in the rural areas, but that's about, our land mass accounts for about 97%. So we want to make sure that we're able to implement these technologies across our nation. Next slide. So just to give you an idea of the types of vehicles that I'm discussing or that I'm actually interacting with, because unfortunately I'm not, I have kind of a small view in terms of what we are doing here in the United States, since I'm focused more on the human factors portion. But we do have a fleet of vehicles on our campus, and we have been deploying them. They were actually deployed 2 years ago, but we continue to do different demonstrations with them as well. Not only do we have the shuttles, but we also have an autonomous car that our students have developed. And as a matter of fact, our shuttles, we specifically picked the Polaris Gem 6s because our students and postdocs can actually program the interactions that they want to have with the vehicles, as opposed to some of the more common vehicles like the Easy Miles shuttle, which we weren't able to actually manipulate. Next. So this is just giving you an idea. We also have a rural test track that we deploy these vehicles on so that we can test certain things that are specific to rural environments, which includes, we have to deal with animal crossings, leaves blowing into the sensors and disrupting the path of the shuttles as well. So there's a lot of different things that we're trying to test from a rural standpoint with our rural test track. Next slide. And I have this brief video. I'm not sure if you are able to play it. If not, we can move on. Okay. So it looks like it's not going to play. But the video just kind of gave you a little bit of an idea of how these vehicles are designed and their capabilities. When we did our deployment back in 2023, you can see on the right-hand side the route that our shuttles took. Our university is right on the outskirts of downtown, so our shuttles were able to be deployed in the downtown area where there's a lot of shops, restaurants, as well as businesses. So during that time frame, it's about a 2.4 kilometer, 1.5 mile circumference that the shuttles traveled. And during that time, we collected information from the actual riders. So that was one of the things that we wanted to get a perspective of, because we do not, on the East Coast, it is not seen very often any type of autonomous vehicles operating completely autonomously. You may see some of that on the West Coast of the United States, but on the East Coast, that is not common at all. And within North Carolina itself, we are not even allowed to deploy any autonomous vehicle without an operator behind the wheel. So that's some of the differences, and there's differences across the different states within the United States as well. So there's a lot of regulation that occurs with these vehicles. Next slide. And just to kind of give you an idea of some of the perceptions, just real quickly, we collected data after the rides. So most of them did believe that the shuttles appeared to be safer than conventional shuttles. But remember, there was actually a driver behind the wheel. So that may have reflected in some way, shape, or form on their perceptions of the safety. Would they ride the shuttles again? As you can see, the majority would. You can go to the next slide. Okay. All right, so their experiences were favorable in terms of the stress reduction that some of us view as being a benefit of utilizing public transportation in general, but these shuttles in particular, they all had favorable views about that. But the one thing, if you click the next, a couple of things to mention, would they give priority to these types of shuttles over their own vehicles? And most of them said no. And did they feel their level of safety in terms of riding in the vehicle itself? It wasn't really, it was kind of on the mid-range there in terms of the majority felt like it was safe, but not any safer than before they rode the shuttle. So their perceptions really didn't change. Next slide. On a more scientific side, since that's my area of research, we were also looking at different things such as people's dispositional factors as well as situational factors that might impact people's willingness to utilize these vehicles. Next slide. So just to quickly go through this, these are just some of the measurements that we took. Of course, we looked at personality, and we also wanted to see what their propensity to trust is before they actually rode in the vehicles, or were exposed to the vehicles. But also we took these other measurements in terms of risk, ease of use, usefulness, some very common measurements, and their intent and attitudes towards the shuttles. Next slide. And just to kind of give you an idea, if in general, pre and post, so we did some of the measurements pre-exposure to the shuttles and post-exposure to the shuttles. Of those measures, you can see a slight uptick in the positive direction for most of the measures like trust, ease of use, and attitude, as well as their intent. No major differences, but we did see everything moving in the direction that we expected. If you click the next one. I think the only one that was not moving in the direction we expected was the relative advantage. So that might be something we have to think about in terms of expecting people to utilize these vehicles over others. Next slide. And then we also took a little poll to compare some of the vehicle designs. So the one that's most common here in the United States is the Easy Mile. That's the one that's been tested at many universities. But our shuttle, as I said, has a different configuration. My data was collected both in Australia, because I was actually on a Fulbright scholarship at that time, as well as in the United States. So when I polled the people in Australia and the United States in terms of which configuration they would most likely utilize themselves, the one in the bottom was the one most of them selected. But when they were asked which one appeared to be more comfortable, my Australian participants said that the ones in the first design appeared to be more comfortable, as opposed to the United States, where design 2 was the one that was considered to be more comfortable. So those are just a few of the perceptions that we've collected data on. You can go to the next slide. And so I am definitely willing to do provide additional information in terms of the actual data that came from the which configuration they would select. The comparison study is what I call that. So feel free if you're interested in obtaining more information in terms of why they selected those particular vehicles. And we are doing other presentations, of course, in other domains that are more on a research perspective as well. But thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Miranda. Thanks a lot for insights from North Carolina and, well, Australia for that matter. Looking forward to some questions later on. But let's move over to Emily directly. Emily, the floor is yours. I believe you are sharing your screen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Happy to be with you this afternoon. So I'm just sharing my screen and then let the floor to Bertrand as a starting point.
Hello, everyone. So we'll take a few minutes to go through this supply and demand in AV markets as an OEM, as Navia Mobility, and what are the challenges that we need to overcome. Yes, next slide, please. Just a short word about the AV market in Europe, USA, and in Asia. Between 2016 and 2022, we saw over 400 projects worldwide focusing on testing and experimenting AV as part of public transportation network. These experiments were usually short-term operation carried out in Europe using technologies from French manufacturers like EasyMile and Navia. Only a few numbers of vehicles per site, and mainly in private sites like campuses, airports, or business hubs, but also first and last mile in rural areas. At the same time, in the USA and in Asia, the main focus was in large-scale deployment of robotaxi on larger area of operation and involving a greater number of vehicles. This leads to a difference in investment, billions of dollars invested by American and Asian players, and only a few millions at the European level. However, since 2023, we see some similarities between the different regions, where the intention is also to move from robotaxi to shared vehicles or shuttles. And on the European side, the goal is to scale up to larger areas of operation also in Europe, as Oslo and with Router is a good example. Yes, next slide, please. So as an OEM, the main challenges are regulatory, technical, financial, and societal. And we'll dig into these 4 challenges in this next slide, please. So the major technical obstacles, as you may know, is first of all, autonomous vehicle must accurately interpret their surroundings in real time. This means improving our algorithm and AI models and the sensor fusions to handle the complex urban environments, the bad weather and unexpected obstacle. Obviously, the sensors, we use a variety of sensors like camera, lidars, radars, and other sensors. And the challenge is finding the right balance between performance, costs, redundancy, and safety. Third is the infrastructure, and today road infrastructure are not designed for self-driving systems. V2I, like vehicle to infrastructure communication, will obviously enhance safety, but it requires updates to traffic lights, road markings, and connectivity system. The first one is the cybersecurity and data management. Obviously, autonomous vehicle generates a huge amount of data every second, and we require secure transmission and storage of these data to protect from cyber attacks, obviously. And for that, we need support from certified agencies that can also help us develop a compliant solution and improving our compliance into cybersecurity problems. And finally, the verification and validation of our system. Simulation is a key tool, and testing by simulation is a key tool to ensure safety before the deployment. However, creating realistic test environments that cover rare but critical edge cases like, an unexpected pedestrian crossing at night. This remains a massive challenge, and for that we need real-life test beds, also in Europe. And we know in Asia and in USA this has been the case. They have been experimenting in real life, whereas in Europe we are lacking this approach basically. Emily, that's the next slide is yours.
Yeah, thanks, Bertrand. Just wanted to make a short focus on the different safety national policies, which are, of course, in the long-term perspective as of a paramount importance in the market penetration and deployment. So to start, for instance, with Europe, European regulators emphasize, let's say, a cautious safety-first approach. The EU has mandated, as you know, advanced driver assistance systems in all new vehicles to reduce accidents. So this safety regulation sets a high baseline for AVs. Testing of autonomous vehicles in Europe has been relatively controlled. EU countries authorize pilot tests on public roads in line with international conventions, often requiring safety drivers and strict oversight. Notably, Europe has had few high-profile AV crashes, partly due to limited deployments. This has kept public concern lower, but also means safety validation is occurring mostly in simulation and small trials. On the opposite side, the United States initially adopted a more experimental, let's say, approach to AV safety, allowing extensive road testing under varying state regulation. This led at the very beginning to rapid advancement, but also small incidents that have heightened scrutiny and public wariness, as for instance, 68% of American drivers reported fearing self-driving cars in 2023, up from 55% in 2022. As far Asia is concerned, and if we start with China, for instance, and its AV safety approach, it is characterized by government supervised scale. With strong state support, China has deployed hundreds of autonomous taxis and buses under pilot programs in at least 16 cities. Testing is typically confined to designated zones and conditions. Driverless operation is now approved in some areas. Notably, Chinese authorities tend to manage the narrative around AV safety. Online discussion of AV crashes is restricted by censors to curb public fear. And in Japan, safety testing has been very conservative so far. Early deployments have been limited to controlled environments, for example, low-speed autonomous shuttles. And this cautious approach reflects Japan's culture of safety and perfection. Japanese regulators only recently permitted higher level automation, level 4, on public roads in limited form. And every incident is treated as a learning opportunity. In summary, Asia's safety landscape spans aggressive real-world trials in China under tight government control versus methodical small-scale pilots in Japan, with both aiming to prove safety before broad commercialization. So it is just a very small ecosystem about safety in worldwide.
Thank you, Emily. So we've covered very rapidly the technological challenge, the regulatory challenges. Obviously, one of the challenges is the financial one. And we all know that autonomous driving requires massive R&D investment, specifically for the development of the software and the associated computer units. What we usually forget is that a major cost is also with the availability of a vehicle platform that meets the strict and safety standards and the meeting the highest ASIL ratings or level, the redundancy, and design with fail-safe architecture. And this is nowadays we don't see a one player coming with the solution that answers all these safety requirements worldwide. So in addition to that, autonomous vehicle also must be interoperable and adaptable ensuring, well, as Emily said, compliance with local, national, and international safety regulations. The challenge is that these standards are constantly evolving. So we, as manufacturer, we are required to continuously update our technology over time. So this adds both technical and financial uncertainty, making it difficult to scale across the different markets if we want to address the entire all markets that we are talking about now: Europe, Asia, and the US. And finally, the investing in new technology remains a financial risk for the entire ecosystem. And what we saw in Europe, as I said, in the past years between 2016 and 2022, most of the players were in the ecosystem were ready to take the risk and spent quite a lot of money in testing. But nowadays, it's not necessarily the case, and everyone is waiting patiently to have so that the supplier and the supplier like us comes with a full L4 solution, which still will need a bit of time to be released. Despite these challenges, I think we see there are strong opportunities. We see technology advancements with obviously AI, but also in terms of sensor safety that are and also reducing the cost of the key components of the vehicle and the sensor set is moving in the right direction. Obviously, there is economies of scale because this will drive the price down as more vehicles are produced and put on the road. And finally, the opportunity is to partner with automotive manufacturer that will help us to reduce the cost of building our own platform or retrofitting a platform that with a man platform to a robotized platform. So we see these are opportunities in the overall ecosystem in the years to come. Last slide, please. Yes. Yes. Last but not least, obviously, the successfully implementing autonomous vehicle, we need to address the societal challenges and public trust, as Miranda said, is a key issue. Like bad experiences such as poor braking behaviors or unmet mobility needs can really delay adoption. Obviously, the absence of a driver needs to be compensated by features like information screens, not only inside for passengers, but also sharing information to other road users. We need bi-directional communication means with a control center. And moreover, we really need to focus on areas of operation with a lack, where there is a lack of public transport at first. So we see mostly implementation in Europe in rural areas with shared and on-demand shuttles, for instance. Cultural difference across regions also plays a significant role in the acceptance. We see it in the previous presentation. In Europe, people tend to be cautious about new technologies. In Asia, in the US, on the other hand, there is higher acceptance of new technologies, and government initiative will clearly pushing towards AV adoption. And the last one is, elderly people and those with disabilities still have concern about safety, security, usability, and accessibility of these solutions. So we need to further research into these, into how factors like vehicle design, cleanliness, and accessibility will influence user acceptance, specifically for these population. I think that's it on our side. Thank you very much for listening.
Thanks, Petra and Emily. I also have some questions noted down for you that I'm looking forward to asking you later. Thanks for your presentation. I think now we move over to you, Rico.
Yes, let me just share my screen. I hope you can see it right now.
Yes, perfect.
Perfect. Okay. So hi, everyone. My name is Rico Kempfer. I'm heading the market and strategy team and market intelligence team within our P3 autonomous mobility practice. And I remember that a couple of months ago, Christoph Glauser reached out to me because my market insights report was circulated within the ULTIMO community, and that's why I'm speaking today, because this report is actually well, highlighting the supply side of autonomous vehicles, and we've been doing this for quite a long time now. And as this report, from my point of view, gives you a pretty comprehensive overview of the dynamic AV landscape, I should briefly introduce the report to you and give you the opportunity to download your copy afterwards. So first of all, well, so as I said, we've been analyzing global AD and ADAS markets for quite a long time now. And a couple of years ago, we actually decided to really share our expertise in comprehensive reports that are available for free. So we are obviously not sharing everything, but I think these reports are quite valuable. So we have this P3 ADAS market insights, which is quite new. So we recently published our second edition. So this is more about ADAS, so level 2+, level 2, and level 3 on global markets. Our latest report is the software-defined vehicles market insights report. What I'm talking about today is the P3 AD market insights. So the names are pretty confusing, but the first one was the AD market insights report. So the report I usually publish in a bi-monthly manner. And I would like to briefly introduce you what this report is about. So in general, we've been analyzing these AV mobility as a service ecosystems for more than 8 years now, because we initially set up this report with a global OEM. I think it was in 2015, 2016. So I obviously have seen many companies come and go in this AV market, and it's still market consolidation is still going on. So we will see market consolidation in Europe in the next couple of years, in the US and in China as well, especially with focus on privately owned vehicles. But what do we do in this report? So we analyze these global autonomous driving, like call it value creation networks or ecosystems or value chains, based on layer models. So we have dedicated layer models for each, for mobility as a service, for POVs, and for goods transport. And for each company that we take into our focus, we identify strategic partnerships, supplier deals, or supplier partnerships, investments, acquisitions. And we do this for the core markets, North America, Asia, with a specific focus on China, but also Japan and Korea, and obviously Europe. So meanwhile, we have 44 mobility as a service companies. So it could be like tech providers, so SDF providers, vehicle companies, or mobility platform providers. We have 48 POV companies, and in the logistics sector, we currently have 37 companies that we're analyzing. And as I said, this is very dynamic, right? So like companies come and go. Cruise has withdrawn from the market, for instance, Embark Trucks or Drive AI a couple of years ago, Uber ATG. So this is a very dynamic market. So I believe that this report is very valuable for you to have a really comprehensive overview of this dynamic landscape. So, and currently in total, we have more than 100 slides of this analysis that are included in this report. I mean, obviously some marketing slides as well, but I guess still more than 100 slides are really this AV ecosystem analysis. So what does this layer model look like? So as I said, we have layer models for each of the three use cases, so MaaS, POV, and logistics. And this is the layer model for mobility as a service, which was, as I said, initially developed and created jointly with a major German OEM. But we further developed this one. I think it's kind of detailed, but still high level, right? Because you can always dive deeper into the software layer. For instance, you can go into the application software layer, middleware and stuff. But I think this is still a pretty comprehensive overview. So we have this layer 1. This is basically the automatic driving system. So on the one side, the hardware stack, so chips, domain controllers, SoC, whatever. And we have the software stack, so the virtual driver itself and some development simulation tools and everything around this. The layer 2 is the AD vehicle. So on the one hand, the AD vehicle itself, so the base vehicle. And another part of this is what we call ADS and AD vehicle operations functions. Other companies might call it just operating system. Because now we, at least in Europe, we still have a safety driver in front of the vehicle. So everything that happens in the vehicle, like door control, rider authentication, or when a passenger gets sick, is handled by the driver. But once you can remove the driver from the vehicle, you obviously need to take over both technology and a remote operator. And this is basically the task that need to be fulfilled, and that is in this operating system layer. Layer 3 will be fleet operations, so both physically and virtually. So on the one hand side, we will have like typical maintenance tasks, repair, financing, asset ownership, so everything around hub operations, fleet operations, so the physical doing. And we also have like 80 fleet control center. So the 80 fleet control center is basically where the remote assistance, the remote operator is located and performs all the tasks that are, for instance, also covered by these operating system functions. And the layer 4 is the mobility platform, so everything like Uber, Lyft, or Moya, for instance. And the layer 5 is, we call it enablers. I think this layer is not so important because sometimes the tasks are covered in other layers as well. For instance, cloud infrastructure could also be covered by layer 1 or by layer 2. So what's the message behind this? So we believe that in order to offer a compelling mobility as a service offering, you need to cover at least layer 1 to 4, either in-house or in partnership with other companies. So what does this report look like? I just would like to briefly show you 3 slides from the core markets. It's really exemplary. So this is exemplary for North America. Mobileye may be a bit confusing because Mobileye is primarily focusing on the European Union and is based in Israel, but due to the individual ties, it's still located in this North America chapter here. So just to give you a glimpse into what this report looks like, so feel free to download it afterwards. The same for Asia. So these are obviously the 3 dominant players in Asia, and 2 of them are already set sail to the European market, for instance, and all of the 3 are also active in the US currently. And we also, as I said, cover the European market. So just exemplary, like VW commercial vehicles, Holon or Oxa. So why I'm telling you this? So it's obviously not just about like promoting this report. As I said, I think it gives you a good opportunity to really have a comprehensive view on the market and an updated view on the dynamic market. But we have one last speaker today, Christoph Glauser, and he and his team, like including Loris Schmidt, are currently working on a paper on AV supply side. And this report was, so my report was actually the data source for one analysis they did in this report, so on this paper. So I would like to hand over to Christoph, the last speaker for today, in order to briefly introduce and show the first results of this analysis.
Okay. Christian, would you like to introduce me, or should I do it myself?
Yes, I thought that Rico did a nice introduction already, so I left it up to you.
Okay, thanks, Rico, for introducing. I tried to share my screen just now, just a second. Okay, I hope you can see my screen. And I hope you can hear me. Is that okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the team, yeah, I'll follow some of the tracks or of the things that have already been said very quickly, so to save time also for you. We are from ArgYou. We are also partner in ULTIMO, and we are actually trying, to give some structure to the things that are done in the project. So we are really following also the user perspective. I mean, everybody's talking about citizen-centric, customer-centric, user-centric, human-centric. Next generation will be alien-centric. But what we do in our teams is actually we are measuring that. So we want to know where are the people, what do they search for, what are the topics, and which are the channels they use to follow these topics. So this works actually in B2C markets, but it also works in B2B markets like the AV market. So we decided really to start measuring there. And there's always a big gap between the gut feeling and what you think that is coming and what you would expect to come, and what is the real thing behind. What are the people already using? What do they search? What do they understand about AVs? And so we are trying to follow this so that we get actually the gap between the inside out view and outside in view of the industry is quite tricky. And of course, it's really interesting to analyze, where are the users, how far are they, how ready are they for AV technology, AV vehicles, and of course using them. So that's why I'm so happy to have all of these speakers in one group, which are covering actually all of the topics in one go. Our part is then we took the data from Rico, and we wanted to know what do people search all around vehicles and on the internet. So it's an independent measurement with valid and reliable data from the digital market, because there is no other market data available so far. Because of course the companies have low figures, they're just starting off, and they don't provide usually a lot of data about the market shares and about the number of vehicles and so on. So we decided to do the analysis the other way around and just ask the internet, what do people already use? What do they understand? And on which channel do they do that? So it's quite interesting to see that AV for example, is running a lot on Instagram. It's running on Facebook. It's running on LinkedIn. A lot of channels that are not expected to be high. Not everything is running on Google, so that's also interesting. Google is coming late here for this topic because it's a rather complex topic, and it's you don't just marry the bride, you marry the whole family. When you do AV, it's about, of course, technology, sensors, operations, vehicles, and traffic, and even legal topics. So it's getting complicated, and for this reason, it's this also has an influence on the channels that are used actually about our topic. So how do we do that? We have developed during the last 20 years some super classes and interfaces to all the channels, because we want to know entire market. We are measuring nowadays more than 14,000 channels worldwide in all languages except Arab, and in almost all of the countries we can measure market demand and see what are people doing on the web, and of course the multi-channel approach. Our measurements go back 30 days, so we are always measuring what has been searched during the last 30 days. This is actually the golden cut of all the channels. Some of them, of course, keep the data longer for up to 600, 800 days, but we just know what, and some less, maybe 10 days only. This is also a regulation topic, on the search engines and on the social media channels and on the eShop. So all of these channels also have to meet regulations, and they are differently keeping the data. So we decided to take the golden cut of 30 days. And then we do valid measurements by APIs and cross-validation. And as I said, more than 40,000 channels. And we always measure on average. So it's when you have a B2B market, it's usually low figures, that you have. And here I take a picture of Rico because of Rico's report, because I like it. He is Actually, I guess he's the only man in the world who started systematically in the beginning. I think together with Volkswagen, he started to analyze this market, and he has the best scope. So when I met him, I recognized that he really knows all the models and all the manufacturers and all the layers. And this was it. This is important to do market research. So when we want to follow the market, we need to know what is the scope, what is in there in this market that we can measure. And these are the first results that we measured. You see between November and February, November last year and February this year. What really surprised us is the trends. You see that the trend is extremely upwards. It's a worldwide measurement of all the models. We have seen that on the level of the AV of the vehicles. It's quite interesting to see how this market improves. I'm of course also happy that Navia is there, growing fast, but also Pix Robobus, Holon, Craft Minibus, and Verne robotaxis. You see that we have all of the vehicles in the measurement, and we will publish it by autumn at the conference in Orlando with all the data. So when you are interested, you just stay in touch, and we will of course publish together with Rico in a scientific publication all of the models so that you see what's happening there. And the second layer that we have analyzed also between November and February is the driving technology. You see that the figures are lower. And of course, the driving technology behind is not so sexy, not so interesting for users, to search for this. And a lot of this is unknown yet. It's just coming. It's a really early stage market report, on the search volume for the driving technologies. But you see here some trends. I mean, Toyota is top. Mobileye already mentioned. Horizon Robotics chips, and of course the Chinese, Baidu, Apollo is there, and a lot of other technologies coming. So it's really interesting to have an eye on the market developments here. And one of my last charts, or second last chart, is the car producers, the ones that already use AV technologies in their cars. Some more, some less. It's also, we were analyzing this on the brands, and it's interesting to see that Hyundai and Volvo and Volkswagen, Volvo and the MAN and Volvo again, they are quite on top here with AV capabilities, for vehicles that are actually classical car producers that are in this business. Also, maybe we have to keep an eye on them and to see what's coming. But also, as you see here, classical vehicles with AV capabilities is much less interesting than the new vehicles coming on the AV side, the new shuttles and robotaxis that are on the way, to conquer the market. It's really interesting because it's early research, and you can have no data from anybody on this topic as for now. So we are really happy to be early stage market research, and of course, thanks to Rico for collecting all the information so that we have the possibility to measure that. If you are interested, you can send us an email on info@argyou.com, and we will of course send you the scientific report, the full report with the full tables towards autumn 25. So we will publish it in the US on a scientific publication track. And it will be interesting to have all the market information together at once. Thank you very much. I also want to thank to Christian for being our host and our conferencier. Thank you, Christian. Just imagine that behind such organizations, there's a lot of work to be done. Daria started with it. She's on mother leave now, thanks to Daria. And also thanks to Scott, who's managing, the webinar and the technology behind from UITP in Brussels. Thanks a lot, Scott, for managing us on the technological side. And of course, a great thanks to all the speakers participating. It was great fun to have you in the group, and I think we managed to find a really cool gathering together. which is quite exceptional on the topic as for now. And I'm really happy to have you all on the webinar. Now it's time to ask questions. I think, Christian, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Exactly. Thanks, Christoph. Thanks for your overview as well. And actually, indeed, as Christoph, as you said, now's the time to ask questions. So please make use of the chat, as I said before. And while you do think about your questions, let me actually give one last discussion restarter through Mentimeter. The last question I want to ask before we actually dive into the discussion. It really builds up on what we just heard. So essentially, wait, do you see this now? Christoph, can you see the screen? Just double check. Yeah, wonderful. Indeed, please log in again using the QR code or using this code up here that we did before, the same link. It really builds up on what we've just heard. So there seems to be a lot going on in Europe, but especially outside of Europe. We've seen companies like Waymo being mentioned, WeRide, Baidu. So now really the question is, what should European public transport authorities really do with this? Especially now when they have the discussion internally, should they get started with deploying automated vehicles in the large scale or not? Should they essentially, and that's the first question, embrace readily available technology essentially from the US or China to implement now? Or should they wait for European manufacturers, OEMs, to catch up and develop and provide solutions basically inherently from Europe, but accepting potential delays? So let's see what the audience think. And that's also maybe a question that I first want to hand over to Martin Rust from Austria. How do you think about this, and how do you think Austrian organizations should think about this?
I would not go for either or, I would go for both. So of course not going for any delays. I think it's needed to try to collaborate also with the global market players. I think it's looking into the strengths, but having a clear perspective on, let's say, the different perspectives that Rico was sharing on the different layers. So what's the market? The market is not a single thing. Yeah? And even if you say, for instance, one of the big ones like Waymo or Baidu, so when they come to any country or region, I think it would be the same as when Navia or whomever is coming. It's always also not just about European value creation, it's about local value creation. Yeah? So who is doing this? Who has the competence to run the show and not just to purchase or procure any vehicles? I think this is not the question. Of course, you can go for any kind of procurement process, but in the end, you need the operational capacity and competences to do that. I think this is, but on the other hand, I think it's of course, but even the collaboration, we get a delay here because we have not a kind of, well, what should I call it? A common investment perspective. Huh? So when I think to the field of AI, also quite promising, maybe similar to automation. So where is the automated mobility factory like the AI factories, for instance? But then it's a super complex thing. It's not just about the products, it's about running the services. We need the combination therapy of measures. Of course, national investment plans, but also maybe loans from the European Investment Bank, or of course, in times like this, where to find money, you have to look into dual use. So, of course, it's already, maybe certain kind of technologies are already there. And I think this kind of wider perspective, it's super needed, but we should not wait and sit back and wait for any kind of players to be ready with something. Yeah? It will never happen otherwise.
Yeah, thanks for that, Martin. I like the point that you kind of want to do like this dual approach to basically not miss out on anything, not miss out on experience that can be learned, but still incentivize, let's say, industries here to develop solutions that you need in Austria, that we need in Europe in general. Rico, I'm not sure if you're still in the call. I know that you are kind of on travels, but how does that relate?
He just told me that he left, but
Okay.
yeah, you can pass questions to me if you like. Yeah.
Exactly. Perfect. Then thanks, Christoph. How does what Martin just said correlate with what you found in your analysis? Specifically when I think you called it the digital demand, or let's say the search profiles of different providers. How do these results, let's say, relate with the real life demand and supply?
Yeah, I cannot tell that because I don't know the figures from the manufacturers, but it would be nice, of course, to collect them once and try to find out how far they are. It was astonishing to us to see how the demand is growing. You know, it's double digit. It's really it's a massive growth in half a year. You know, in half a year's time, which is interesting because we didn't expect that as early as that. In ULTIMO, we were also discussing about 2030, 2035, something like this. You know, we knew it will come, but probably it will come faster than expected. So this is the base. This is the main message of the results from the demand side. And apart from this, I think we will continue to measure that. We will do monitorings maybe over time. And also Rico is, of course, continuing to collect the variations, the modifications of the supply side. And actually, you know, supply and demand is always the most interesting to do. So you have a list of suppliers and you have a list of demand, and then you can match this. And I think this is quite rewarding. And I hope it will help also to people who have to decide now about the models and about the operation systems. That of course we try to offer some overview on this from both sides, you know, from the supply side and from the market side, demand side. That's the idea, and you can't do it on your own. I mean, you can never, you don't walk alone, you know, in this business. It's always about collaboration and cooperation.
Exactly. Thanks, Christoph. Moving over to you, Miranda. I see that the perception study that you've been doing in North Carolina and also in Australia, as you said, was already in 2023, which is in AV terms quite far away, if you will. Are you also studying or planning on study, let's say, how the perception is evolving with the current rollout of these autonomous ride-hailing providers that we see also in Atlanta, just south of North Carolina, with Waymo and Uber, Lyft and Mobileye, May Mobility, for example. How's that perception changing at the moment?
Yeah, and actually my data has been collected through December of last year. So the deployment that we had was in 2023, late 2023, but I was collecting data that wasn't necessarily from actual shuttle riders, but they were being exposed through video information about the shuttles. So that data was collected through December 2024. But yes, it's something that has to be continuous because the technology continues to change and people's perceptions continue to change. Now, mind you, the population that I was basically tapping into are the younger generation. So being on a college campus, even when I was collecting the data in Australia, that was on the University of New South Wales campus. So it was primarily students who were participating. So their perceptions differ more likely than the older generations as well. So I think it's necessary to continuously poll with the new technologies that are coming out. Again, on the East Coast, these vehicles aren't seen as much as on the West Coast. So even between the two areas of the United States, you're going to have different perceptions. And with our regulatory differences from state to state, you know, it's a little challenging in terms of trying to measure what the US perspective is, simply because the regulations keep us from being able to compare apples to apples. So that's one of the challenges that we have. So I do think that, anytime these deployments are made, regardless of where they are, that there needs to be some type of data collection. And in most cases, I've seen that there is some level of data collection that takes place with the deployments, but that has to be continuous because, as you said, the landscape keeps changing. And so we have to understand, even with I think somebody mentioned AI in general. So with AI in general, people's comfort levels are changing. And as that changes, that's going to change their comfort level in these autonomous vehicles as well. So the more comfortable they get with ChatGPT and all the other devices that we use just on our computers, the more comfortable they'll become with using, or the thought of using, these autonomous technologies for mobility as well.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. What we notice as well in many European projects, especially the ones that maybe took place in the early 2020s, they talked a lot about social acceptance and really tried to analyze how that is also shifting with the progress of technology. And a lot of feedback that we received was that actually, if the service quality remains the same or similar, but only the driver is taken out, that usually the public acceptance is very high, basically right from the start, right? So that's also something worth understanding, and kind of is maybe in line with one of the polls that we did just at the beginning of this webinar, when we asked, hey, what are the key factors holding back Europe's deployments? It seems that public acceptance and trust is not seen as the biggest the biggest factor that's impacting European deployments, which is a good thing, because I know that when we did the same question maybe a year ago, that was much higher. So it's nice to see that now we're actually talking about, hey, how can we invest into targeted deployments? How can we get vehicle providers on board to work with us on this? So, Maren, it's nice to see that you've also done this in North Carolina.
Yes, thank you.
And that also brings me maybe to a question to Emily and Bertrand. You mentioned that the social acceptance is a big issue to deployment. Now that we see, well, actually, maybe it is, of course, part of the picture, but it seems that people are at least increasingly comfortable with artificial intelligence and kind of new technologies also being on our streets. Is that incentivizing you to go to Europe, go and do more deployments or work on new projects? How is it influencing your work?
I think the factor of not having a driver is still something that we haven't truly tested, and most of 99% of the experimentation that were done in Europe were still with a safety driver, and we see from some of the studies that were made that this will have an impact. And even if you ask people around you, they will tell you that they will probably be a bit worried at the first time they will enter an autonomous vehicle without anyone that is from the company or participating to the onboarding and the welcoming of this type of solution. So obviously there is yes, the acceptance will improve now that we have AI around us everywhere, but still in Europe in particular, looking at the fact that we are still people that are careful and that we need to ensure that safety is here. The project that will start with the objective of being L4 will have to be a step by step, and ensuring the public acceptance and the awareness of the public is well achieved before the vehicle can actually go without safety driver. And this is key to plan the sufficient time to allow everyone that might be able to take this vehicle to be fully aware and comfortable when the driver will actually be out, and also teach them how to react and communicate with the control center, how everything works. This will still be a period of time that from our perspective, hasn't been tested really. So this is what needs to be achieved. I think also as part of Ultimo is maybe with still someone on board for the time being in terms of safety, making sure that everything related to communication with the control service center and so on is also tested, and people are actually welcome to test this type of and push to call the control center, see how they would react in certain situation and so on. So I think there is still a few steps to reach the full L4, I would say.
All right, thanks. One of the other things that I noticed when looking at the results of this poll today was that the availability of technology and vehicle providers is less of a significance, or let's say like that, it's less big of a factor that holds Europe back than it was half a year ago. And since Rico was talking about market consolidation going on, and Christoph, you were looking at the digital demand over also half a year period, I believe. Is it in line with what you found that, let's say, it seems that more availability of vehicle providers or technology is coming up? Is that what you see in your studies as well?
Yes, that's also increasing, but not in the same speed as the vehicle providers. I mean, this is the visibility part, the part that you see in the street. People that the vehicles are running in the street. That's what you see, and obviously they are the front runners. The technologies behind is of course interesting for the industry and for us as experts, but not so much in the same amount of interest as the vehicles. Maybe this will change. I'm not sure. It will be difficult for the technology providers, to have the same amount of visibility than like the vehicle producers. So this is something that we need to follow. Sometimes also technology providers start building vehicles, and the other way around, vehicle providers start to produce operation centers and own technologies. So this is a kind of a interconnected thing, But yeah, but we are just beginning, It's early stage, yeah.
And does your research align with this poll that we did earlier today? Because I believe you also had a look at a lot of different companies, right? And how the digital footprint kind of evolves over the months. Do we see a connection with these results?
Yes, it's quite close. Yeah, there are some of the results you see here are the same that you see on my chart. I mean, for the ones that would like to have the presentation, you can of course get that in a PDF. And as I said, the scientific publication will be out in autumn, and it will be free as well. It's open science, and so you can have the result. The full results will appear in autumn, so it's really a preview that we have shown today.
Of course, this is just a snapshot of very different companies as well, right? So we have Waymo, for example, really focusing on robotaxis, private vehicles that can be shared, but are probably not shared in real life on the streets. And in Europe, I think the vision really is to go to shared automated vehicles for public transport.
Exactly.
Purposes.
We were actually focusing on the shuttles, and on but a little bit also on the robotaxis when it's about the technology background. So actually, yeah, the difficulties is really, to define the scope between US, China, and Europe. Of course, we have defined together with Rico. And then, of course, Rico is also measuring the trucks, and transportation vehicles and LAS and etc. So we were really reducing to the market that is interesting also for Ultimo.
Yeah. Then a question that I saw in the chat was from Pierre, who asked a question to Martin, how he thinks the EU can tackle the investment issues of that we see in Europe versus several billions being invested in other countries and regions, which is kind of aligned with this biggest roadblock that we see here, which is the lack of targeted investments in innovation. How do you think about this issue?
I think the first thing, of course, there's an investment needed. I think this is a common perspective, but is it really the EU? So if we understand the EU, it's all of us, then it's the EU, yeah, because it's about a shared common investment perspective, where of course governments, starting with Brussels, but then also national governments have to put certain kind of combined measures in our perspective with regard to facilitating or fostering the private investments. And there, I think it's really this crucial perspective on what Europe is wishing for. So the automated buses, shuttles, public transport, and who is going to pay for that? And especially with regard to building the competencies and investing in these early phases. So are the public transport operators then really the right candidates with all their given structures and the amount of fresh money and also the perspective of making a market out of that? So I think it's, of course, there might be areas, for instance, in a city or region where, of course, think on a suburban perspective. Huh? So, but if you go back, so I'm a spatial planner. When I go back and look into the history of the suburb, what was the game changer for living in a suburb? The shopping malls. So I think what's the shopping malls of our automated future for a suburb or a more dispersely populated area of a city? So where is the market needs and wants coming from? Also from us privately. So we are not going to have 3-car households. We have 1-car household then in these suburbs where with access to public transport. So it's a private investment and the public sector is facilitating that. But to learn this, we don't need any what I call hyper-local testing anymore with 2 or 5 shuttles. We need something else. We also have to provide fleets in dedicated areas and regions where we learn how to scale and doing these kind of shared investments according to a common plan with all the players from industry, public transport, government, and so on. I think this is, for me, this would be one option. Yeah? Do I know how to do it? No. We have to shape these things together on, of course, European and national scale.
Yeah. Miranda, what do you think about across the pond? Is that something, would you agree with that approach, only knowing that we only have 1 minute left?
Well, in 1 minute, make it short. Yes. I mean, there does need to be a lot of collaboration across the countries. Now, whether how feasible that is, I can't speak to that. But I think there's a lot of great minds out there. And by working together, we'll be able to come up with a more feasible solution that touches more of our populations in general, as opposed to just segmented portions of our populations.
That's perfectly well said, and also summarizes our session for today. I want to thank you all for your contributions today, for presenting your view, engaging in this Q&A, and also to our audience for joining us today. There will be more Ultimo webinars coming up, so keep an eye out on our LinkedIn newsletter and other media that we have. And also thanks, Christoph, for organizing. Thanks for all the people behind it. And yeah, have a nice rest of the afternoon, and hopefully see you all very soon. And some of the very nice events that are coming up, for example, the EU-CUT event in Ispra in May, but also the ITS Europe in Sevilla later in May as well. So I hope to see you all around there. Perfect. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you, and have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Thanks.